Hey, Walter Sorrells back with another Knife Making Friday 5. Today we're going to talk about safety and specifically about gloves and the grinder. I know people are not all that interested in safety, but the reality is that there are a lot of things in the knife making shop that can hurt you. And so a viewer named Josh McCoy asked me specifically about gloves and using them on the grinder. Just wanted to kind of have my thoughts on that subject. I don't grind with gloves, so I'm just going to tell you about my perspective on this and kind of my thinking as to why I would or would not use gloves. I know that there are guys who use gloves all the time on the grinder, and more power to them if they can do it successfully. So the first point that I would make about gloves generally is that, machinists, people who are using rotating machinery, as a general rule, don't like gloves at all. In fact, machinists really stay away from gloves. They don't even like long sleeves, because if things get caught in rotating machinery, you can get sucked into machines and really, really bad things can happen to you. So on the face of it, to me, that's pretty much a good reason not to be using gloves. Now, one of the things about grinders is they are less likely to suck you into the machine than, lathes and large drills and things like that. Still, they can do it, and something happened to Josh that he talked about in the email that he sent me, which is that he has a table. I don't typically grind with a table, but if you have a little platform here that that you grind on top of, there's inevitably a little gap in between the belt and the grinding table, or rest. Some people call it a rest, whichever one you want to call it. If your glove gets sucked into that little gap, you can really get things smashed up. So, the first thing is, if you're going to use gloves, I would say really minimize that gap as much as possible. When you set up your table or your rest, make sure that it's as absolutely close to your belts as possible. Tighter that gap, the less likely something is to get sucked into it. Okay, but let me walk you through my basic thinking about gloves generally. I guess my first question is, what is it that you're trying to protect when you use a glove? Basically, you got two issues here. The first is heat, and the second is running your fingers into the grinder. When I first got my grinder a decade and a half ago, it really made me nervous. It was a spooky machine. It's throwing out all these sparks and stuff, and you really worry about bumping your fingers into here and causing yourself grievous injury. Over time, what I realized is, yeah, you can bump your fingers into here, and I'm sure that there are folks who have ground really nasty holes into their hands and maybe caused serious injuries to themselves as a result of bumping their fingers into here, and so might want to use gloves to protect them. But I'll say, in 15 years of using this thing, or whatever it's been, it's probably more than 15 years by now, I've never had a serious injury, not even close to a serious injury, bumping my fingers into the grinder. Yeah, you're going to skin your knuckles every now and then. You're going to, grind a little off the end of your thumb, but those are not serious injuries. Those are not things to really be concerned about. I've never had a problem on here in terms of grinding skin off, abrasions, that you couldn't throw a little duct tape on top of it and keep working. That said, I'm not trying to minimize this, but I'm just saying, for me, that's not a good enough reason to use gloves. So the other issue is heat. People see these in operation, they throw off a lot of sparks and so on. That's not the heat issue. The heat issue is that when you're putting a knife into the platen here, or the wheel, or whatever it is that you're grinding against, it generates an enormous amount of heat. Very, very quickly it becomes too hot to hold. And so some folks like using gloves to mitigate that heat. But my feeling is, look, you get maybe 3 or 4 more seconds of grinding out of however long you're holding it before it's so hot that it's going to actually burn through your gloves. So yeah, you probably get a little bit more grinding time by using gloves, but not that much. My feeling is that you only have a couple of little spots that your hands actually touch that blade. Your thumb, part of your finger. You can actually just tape up those contact spots with, probably not duct tape because it's plastic, but using masking tape. And I do this sometimes. Just tape up those contact spots. However you hold it, it's usually going to be somewhere right in here and somewhere on your thumb. And as you go from side to side, you'll need to do it on both sides. What this does is it allows you to continue to have the ability to manipulate the blade and maintain sensitivity in your hand that you kind of lose to some degree, at least with gloves, but it still helps you mitigate that heat a little bit. But my feeling again about the heat issue is at the end of the day, you're going to have to be cooling that blade one way or the other, no matter what. So gloves only get you so far, and to me the trade-off of problems caused by gloves is not worth what you gain from it. So one little housekeeping thing I want to mention is that I've gotten so many viewers sending in pictures of their knives. I've been just really amazed and gratified by it, but it's a little bit of a problem for me in 2 ways. First is I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to get everybody's pictures into the next viewer knife video that I do. I would love to, but I may just have to cut it off somewhere. So if your knife doesn't make it in, really sorry about that. I've just been flooded with folks. And the other point on that is I really try hard to answer all my emails. I don't necessarily answer people on Facebook. I've mentioned that before because I don't check Facebook all that much. But emails, I try and get back to everybody who sends me an email, but I've gotten so much volume of communications from folks sending pictures and comments and all that sort of thing. Anyway, try to get back to as many folks as I can, but if I haven't gotten back to you, doesn't mean I didn't get your email, and I apologize for not reaching out to you, but like I say, really been swamped. All right, so I hope that talking about safety hadn't been too boring. I think it really is an important issue at the end of the day, and look forward to seeing you next Friday.